lot of people have asked me how I got into this business, and I love answering that question because it's a fun story. I got to where I am on the basis of one decision made out of ignorance after another one. It goes back to my Hopkins days. As an undergraduate in late 60s at Hopkins, I was in that first group in that lottery system for the draft, and I had a very low draft number. So I thought I'd stick it out in ROTC. They had Army ROTC at Hopkins, with the idea that if I had some decent grades, maybe I'd get a choice of branch. Well, I did. And I figured science, math-oriented, communications, I'll pick the Signal Corps. Well, there are no signal divisions anywhere in the world. Signal officers are attached to infantry units. So basically, I signed up for the infantry at a time that was not the best time to sign up for the infantry. 1970 is when I went into active duty. But I got stationed in Fort Carson, Colorado, which was my introduction to Colorado, which was real important. So, next dumb decision. After the Army, I went back east. I taught school for a while. I got a master's and learned there was such a thing as mathematics education. So I thought I'd see if University of Colorado had a doctoral program in that. Well, they did. So I went there, started my doctoral program, and but there were no assistantships. There were very few courses in mathematics education. So I took most of my coursework in statistics design, research design, analysis, measurement, test and measurement, and so on. And also, without the assistantships, I ended up taking a job at the National Assessment, which was in Denver at the time. So that's how I got into assessment. Had I known anything about math ed programs, I would have gone elsewhere. But again, another dumb decision. There are probably a few more dumb ones along the way, but that's enough. That got me started. 35 years ago, we had no idea where statewide testing was going to go. And in fact, it was very small scale at the time. State assessment was in its infancy, and we took on these contracts that were sample assessments modeled after the national assessment. So it was manageable. We were 4 people. We could handle the load. We really didn't expect statewide testing to take off as it did, but within a year, the states that were our states were switching to census testing, meaning they were going to test all the students in selected grades as opposed to just a small sample. Well, we didn't think we stood a chance at winning those, so we were talking about ending the company after the first year and phasing out. And so we talked about going with other testing companies and doing some independent consulting, things like that, but had no idea that we could win those contracts. Well, we bid them, we won them, several contracts, and so all of a sudden we went from $200,000 a year to a few $1,000,000 a year, and we were on our way. Continuous growth after that for the next decade or two. After being in business for many decades, we clearly had some high points that we can brag about, and the early ones, big contracts. We were only a year or so old when we won the Maine Educational Assessment, the Massachusetts Educational Assessment Program, and those were really big for us. Later on, we won MCAS, and we won Kentucky's CURIS program, which was another, actually a groundbreaking assessment program in terms of the design and the nature of the assessment. So those were big. NECAP was another big one because it was a unique situation with a state consortium, one of the first to do large-scale testing in multiple grades, multiple subjects. Winning contracts back after you've lost them is a big deal. And 2 that come to mind in particular are MCAS. We lost MCAS. We were the first contractor, but we lost it after 3 or 4 years because we were underbid by Harcourt by $25 million. The commissioner called me up and said if we had been within 10 or 12, they'd have given it to us. But they owed it to the taxpayer. When a reputable company says they can do it for that much less, they got to go with them. Well, we got back in the door 3 years later, 3 to 4 years later, and been there ever since. So winning that one back was big. And same thing in Kentucky. We got that one back. It was a little longer. It was probably 5, 6, 7 years later, but we got back into Kentucky. So it's great when the clients want you back. You know, they valued what we did the first time around, and our good work pays off later on. Last thing in terms of high points has got to be one of the events we did at our 25th anniversary. We did a lot of things that year, but one event in particular was a particular favorite of mine, and that was we put on a panel discussion. And our reasoning was this, that a lot of our staff don't get to go to conferences where they listen to big name speakers and educators and so on. So we thought, why not share that kind of experience with the whole staff? So we asked 5 distinguished people. 4 of them were commissioners. Actually, one of those was from Ontario. A couple of them were from far across the country. We had them from the East Coast as well as the West Coast. And then we also had the executive director of CCSSO. The great thing about this was the 5 of them immediately after I asked them if they would do this for us, did it. They didn't hesitate to say they would love to be celebrating our 25th anniversary with us, and that was a great thing for me personally as well as for the company. Our corporate culture has always been real important to us right from the beginning. As educators concerned about teaching and learning, that certainly had some impact on our focus and to me our culture as well. I don't think I can define corporate culture, but I know when there are things that are evidence of it. And over the years, we've done and said a lot of things that I think convey what that culture is. Events that the company has, all companies can tell you they have special events. They all have picnics, they all have this, they all have that. For some reason, ours are a little different. And at least we believe they are, and I think they express what our culture is as well. Holiday time, Halloween, for example, for many years we had our kids in our daycare center walk in a parade for us in the parking lot over at Watson Road. The parking lot had 2 levels. It was an oval that had an upper level and a lower level, and the kids would, in their costumes with the teachers and some parents, would walk across the front level in front of us. Staff would be out there clapping and cheering and all that, and then when they went around to the end and turned around to come back the other side, we went down to the next level down, the same people cheering and yelling and screaming, and those gullible kids thought the audience was really big. But anyway, that was just a great experience. Later in the day, the afternoon, and this is something we still continue, departments have decorated their areas and put candy out and stuff, and the kids do trick-or-treating. Not just the daycare kids, but other kids of the staff. Christmas time, we have a snowflake tree, and on the snowflakes are the names of kids and parents that were provided to us by social services. And what happens is a staff member will grab a snowflake and then go and purchase that object, and they store them all down for a while down there in the lunchroom, but then shortly before turning them over to social services, we have a wrapping day, and departments take turns going down to the lunchroom working on wrapping, and there's music and refreshments and things like that, and that's a high point. But the big deal is every year we seem to pick up more and more families, so that's a special event. Other things about our culture, I think I had to relate what we hear from our clients, because that's important. They think we're different. If you ask me what is important to us when it comes to dealing with our clients, I'll always say we're client-oriented and we're all about student learning. Every testing company will say those same things. It's when our clients tell us that we really are those things and we differ from the others in that way, I take it that's a good sign, another aspect of our culture that we value a great deal. I've always felt that statewide assessment was very important to kids, to schools. I think in recent years we've gone astray with statewide assessment, but I'm optimistic that we'll get back to the days when I think the programs are doing the right things, the things that statewide assessment can do, as opposed to the things that statewide assessment can't do, which is what's become the expectation. I always valued what I called the authentic assessment era. That was the 90s, when we were doing a lot of innovative work in our states, performance assessment, portfolio assessment, so on. They were tapping higher order thinking skills, deeper knowledge, deeper learning. And what happened with NCLB at the turn of the century, or 2001, 2002 in January, when it was enacted, um, we went backwards 10 years. We went back to the efficient testing years, the basic skills test, because the test had to be administered in many grades. There was a quick turnaround time required, and there were a lot of factors that basically led to the need for very efficient testing. Efficient meaning time-wise, cost-wise, so on. And we lost something in that. We went back to testing the lower order skills, which is what multiple choice does a better job of. And so I'm optimistic that that will change. ESSA actually offered a degree of flexibility that allows it. The states really haven't picked up on that yet. So the state consortia that were created by the Race to the Top program, they were supposed to be state-of-the-art, and they're supposed to be next generation assessments. The only thing next generation about them was that they put traditional tests online. Every now and then I have a friend visit from out of town sometime, or a relative or whatever. They get on the campus. I'm driving them down the lane, and they see the buildings, and they're wondering which building is where we have our offices. And when I tell them this is all ours, all these buildings are ours, and the 75-acre plot is ours, and so they're a little shocked to hear that. So they always ask, "Did you ever expect this?" And my answer is, no way. No way we could possibly have expected this when you start with 4 people in a competitive business where they're the big guys, the ETSs and the Pearsons and so on. So no, I never expected it. What I didn't expect was all that we could do and all that we could accomplish. And there was quite a bit we accomplished. First off, becoming a major testing company was something that's just surprising, and we did it because we have incredible staff that do wonderful work, and that was one thing. Obviously, we're doing good for kids. Our focus is on teaching and learning, and I think that's stuck with our folks. If you talk to the folks in test development, for example, they're all former teachers, and they're committed to that, as the whole company is, and it's just very pleasing there. The community, we've done a good bit of work for the community, and the community appreciates us, and we appreciate it. And finally, we provided a lot of jobs for people as well. So when you ask what my thoughts are about the company after 35 years, I've got to say I just feel tremendous pride in what this bunch has accomplished. So what's next for me? I'm obviously retiring, and that means I'm coming off the payroll. I'll be working in educational assessment in some way or other for years to come, through consulting with any number of places, I hope, including here possibly. What else is happening with me is this. This I've been working on for the past year is a book. It's about 300 pages right now, and I hope it doesn't get any longer because I think I'm finished the first draft. The title of it is Tests of Will: State Testing, Assessment Literacy, and One Company's Story. And what it is, it's a story of measured progress, but I wanted to accomplish more. And so each chapter is 3 sections long, and the first section is about what's happening in Washington, policy level, what's happening in the industry with our competitors and so on. Second part of every chapter is what's happening within the company, meaning our growth, improvement of our systems, the use of technologies that weren't there before, things like that. And the last section is basically a bunch of stories about specific contracts. And throughout the book is assessment literacy. I was thinking originally when I started this, it would just be in that last section on contract stories, but it's throughout. And it's a take on assessment literacy that I don't think everybody sees or thinks of. And I think it's unique because it's through the perspective of a statewide testing company. And that's a little different perspective, and that's why the sections of the chapters. I chose to make it a personal narrative for a reason. It's my story. It's my recollection of 35 years, which was an amazing 35 years with incredible stories. And while the content I think is very valuable to many audiences, it was a real kick thinking about all these past events and talking to people about them and researching some of them again through all the junk that I keep in the corner of my office here. But it was a great, fun experience writing it. Whether people use it or not, I think it could be very valuable. But at the same time, it's a reflection of the company as I've seen it all these years, and it's a wonderful company. It's accomplished wonderful things with phenomenal staff over the years.